The witches are back. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we're here with my blind reaction to The Witches 2020. And this is a donation reward for Venom, so thank you as always to Venom. So, back in December, we reacted to the original Witches movie, and I didn't get the appeal. It's an extremely popular film that I just didn't quite understand the appeal for. I didn't get why it was so popular. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't that great either, in all honesty. For me at least, of course, because it's all subjective. But I didn't really find a lot to really love about it. And now we move into the sequel, which was extremely poorly received. Well, not sequel, the remake. This remake was poorly received, and a lot of people say it's just not as good. And from what I've gathered, from what I remember from when this came out, it's not really down to the actors or whatnot in it. It mostly comes down to like effects and makeup. A lot of people just say the more practical effects or the more practical makeup and stuff in the original looks better and stuff. And they say that this just wasn't quite as scary, which the original wasn't scary. Like, unless you're like a kid, and honestly, even as a kid, I don't think I would have been scared of that. If I'm being completely honest here. And I'm not like the most brave person out there, so that's saying a bit. But yeah, it's just, it never struck me as that kind of movie that was even supposed to be scary, so I never really got that. But either way, now we move on to this remake, which I guess is probably going to use a lot more CG and stuff because of the times. And here's the thing. This was a very similar argument that happened with The Thing. So I had reacted to The Thing, and it's known as one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and part of the reason is because of its makeup and effects. The practical effects on The Thing are second to none, really. They are so goddamn good. They are phenomenal in the quality. And the movie, despite as old as it is, holds up to this day because of that. And a lot of people said the 2011 prequel, it's not a remake, even though it just has the same name, The Thing. It is a prequel. A lot of people say that the 2011 thing isn't as good because it's not practical effects as much. It relies more on CG and stuff. And while I admit the CG doesn't necessarily look as good, which it doesn't, I will acknowledge that, it doesn't take away from the quality of the movie otherwise. The prequel, the 2011 Thing movie, is still a good movie. It's still just as satisfactory as the original. Well, maybe not as much, but you get the gist. It's still really good. People judged it purely based on one factor. And I really don't like when people do that. It's the same thing that happened with One Punch Man. Oh, One Punch Man Season 2 isn't made by the same studio and doesn't have the same animation quality, therefore it's shit. It's like, no, the season is actually better than Season 1 in pretty much every way, except the visuals. Ooh, the visuals are not as good. They're not even bad. They're just not as good. But literally everything else is better. The story, the characters, the humor. But because the visuals are weaker, everybody hated on it. And treated it like shit. It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. everybody puts the stock of it, and the same goes with The Thing, in one single factor, one single part of production, and just ignores everything else. And I'm starting to wonder if it might be the same thing here, because that's all I ever hear people talking about with this movie, as to why they don't like it compared to the original. It's all about the effects, all about the makeup. That's not a valid argument for me to in the entire movie being bad. You can't judge an entire film's quality on one thing. I'm sorry, but you can't. So it's just, I just really am not a huge fan of that. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that I very much enjoy this movie. And I'm hoping to enjoy it more than the original, because I wasn't a big fan of the original. I'm hoping they fix some of the weirder or less sensical plot elements. And I just want it to be, if nothing else, more fun. Because the first movie was honestly really boring at parts. Like, really boring at parts. So I'm hoping this movie has a little more whimsy to it, a little more excitement. And while the effects may not be as good, I'm still hoping that everything else makes up for that. So we'll see. We will see. And keep in mind, like I said, quality is subjective. So if you don't like this movie and I do end up liking it, that's perfectly fine. We don't have to agree. Just don't be an asshole about it. I'm not going to be an asshole to you about it. I'm never an asshole to people and we just have a disagreement. I just disagree with them. It's as simple as that. As long as it's not hurting anybody, we're fine. And a difference of opinion about a movie's quality does not hurt anyone. So, that being said, we're going to give this a chance, see what it's like, and see if soup is indeed the answer to all of life's problems. Which, considering all of the snow that came out of nowhere here, it might be. Yeah, just random snowfall that came out of nowhere here in Michigan. Like, I was thinking there would probably be one last big snowfall of the year. Seems like I was right. I jinxed it. I apologize. But let's get this going. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I wanted to look up something after I finished the movie, just to make sure on something. And there's a couple, I would say there's 2 notable changes to this movie. Okay, 3. I'm sorry, I lied. There's 3. There's 3 notable changes to this movie, and I think all of them are for the better compared to the 1990 version. The first one is probably the least consequential to the overall movie. It didn't really change that much overall, but it added a new layer of sort of like interaction, as well as answered a question that I kind of had from the original movie that was never really answered. And that was with Daisy / Mary. Now, in the original movie, there were 2 mice, and I believe I questioned both of them, if they were human and everything as well. But it was never quite revealed. Nothing was ever nothing was ever actually like gone into with that, and so it kind of felt like a loose end to me. But in this, instead, there's only 1 mouse that he gets from his grandmother, and it is answered pretty quickly that, yeah, she is another former kid. Now, apparently, I guess it was like in the original, like the potion that turns kids into mice was a new invention, so that wouldn't have really made sense. But in this version, that's not the case. So it doesn't like break the canon or anything. It's just a change. And again, it doesn't really affect that much overall. But it's a nice addition that I think just clears up something that I had with the original that again felt like a loose end to me. And the second thing that was changed was the location and time period. In the original, it was a different location, different time period, different kind of situation going on with it. And in this one, we're in Alabama during, I think it said the 60s. And there's a certain level of social commentary to it with, the main character and his grandmother also being people of color. And the fact that the witches target most specifically children who are from families that are not very well off because they'll be less noticed to have disappeared. You know what I mean? It's less likely that people will care as much, which is really fucked up, but also, again, that social commentary tracks, unfortunately. And I think this actually adds a new layer of depth to the movie that helps it feel like there's more to it. It feels less random, I guess you could say. That's probably the wrong word, but that's kind of how it feels to me, The third notable change is the ending. In the original, there's like the assistant to the Grand High Witch who ends up becoming good in the end because she's constantly abused by the Grand High Witch and realizes in the end, I don't have to put up with this shit. And so she ends up turning our main character back into a boy. And that's kind of how the movie closes out. Apparently, this is actually a movie original ending that did not happen in the original book by Roald Dahl. And from what I read, looking this up in between the reaction and now, Roald Dahl hated that ending. He actually feels like it kind of went against what he was trying to do with the story. And apparently he hated it so much that he actually wanted to get his name removed from the movie because of it. That's pretty wild to me. And we know Roald Dahl was very picky with the adaptations of his work, so it's not really a surprise. But it's wild that he hated it that much. This this adaptation has the more book accurate ending, where he stays a mouse, where kids are not turned back into kids again, and I actually think I like that more because it makes it feel like the witches are more of a threat when things can't just be reversed. Also, by not having the character in there, the assistant who turns good, it also paints the witches as more just unquestionably evil. Because that's the thing, in both the original and now this one, the witches are said to be just pure evil. There's no good in them. And yet, that's contradicted by the ending of the original. And that's probably why Roald Dahl hated it so much. Because the ending contradicts the witches as, as an entity, basically. It contradicts what is said about them. And yeah, you could say it adds a layer of depth, it adds more nuance to things. And yes, to a degree, but that's not what the case is supposed to be. There's not supposed to be nuance there. So having that character just completely removed from this version and having it center more on just the witches being pure evil and irredeemable and everything makes them feel more threatening. even if the CG isn't as technically good as the practical effects of the original. And I will admit that. In the original, the witches looked more, monstrous. Like with the insane proportions and the creepy skin and everything. In this, they look mostly the same, just they have the splits that allow their mouths to open wider, and the rashes on the back of their heads and everything from the wigs. Plus, of course, the like pronged claws and messed up feet and everything. But otherwise, like facial wise, they look mostly the same. Let's be honest. And I'm wondering if that was done just because they didn't want to like make Anne Hathaway look ugly or something. I don't know. I don't know what the case or the reasoning for that is. But even though like technically speaking the practical effects were better than the CG was in this, I didn't mind it. It really didn't hamper my feeling of the movie at all. And again, with the other factors taken into account, like the fact that the witches here are actually irredeemable, the witches are honestly scarier in this one than they are in the original. And I might be like the only person who thinks that, but I don't care. I think they come across as more threatening. They come across as more violently and like aggressively evil. Again, having one of the witches be redeemed in the end of the first one hurts that message. And it's just, I feel like it didn't work for me. And on top of that, there's also the part after that, like the credits scene, where we see like the more grown up kid now, Mouse, whatever you want to call him, and he's now voiced by Chris Rock, and he's training these kids to be witch hunters and everything with his grandma. That part apparently was not in the book. There was implications that had happened, that they were doing stuff like that, but like there was no like details and everything in the book in the original movie. So they basically expanded on it. And on top of that, they also expanded on the family stuff at the beginning and just kind of like giving us, a more proper introduction to the characters. And I feel that helped me connect with our characters a lot more. I cared about them more in this version. I I was more attached to them. The only exception I would probably say is Bruno. I felt Bruno was cut back a little bit. Bruno, I think, had more screen time in the original, and especially in regards to his parents and stuff. But it didn't hurt the movie here. It was noticeable, but I don't think it actually hurt anything. On top of that, I think this movie was just more entertaining and fun to watch. The original movie had slow parts and honestly took quite a bit to get going. There were some portions of the original movie that were boring to me. And I couldn't get into it as much. Even when it did get more exciting, it really wasn't that exciting. I just wasn't having fun watching it. And with this one, I was having a blast almost the entire time, even before they got to the hotel. I felt more in tune with it. It felt more enjoyable. It felt fun. And I liked it more on just a personal level. And yeah, I think that's kind of what it comes down to for me. I just enjoyed it more. Like, for the various reasons and whatnot, and although the original did have a couple things maybe over this one, in total, I just thought this one was a better movie. I would watch this one way quick. I would watch this one again way quicker than I would ever watch the original again. In fact, I'm probably going to end up going to search for. Well, at this, by the point you're seeing this, I will have already done so, for reactions to see if other people put up reactions to this one specifically. And I want to say something here. I'm not gonna be like an asshole and say like, oh, people only like the original because of nostalgia. They watched it as kids and they liked it as kids, so they assume they have to like it as adults. No, if you like the original more, that's fine. Most people seem to do so, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not gonna try to judge you for it or try to tell you why you would like it more than the new one. If you like it more, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you like it more, and you are entitled to that. Just like I'm entitled to like the new one more. Let's just respect each other's opinions, even if they're different. And we can disagree. We can disagree with each other on this. We can even discuss politely and calmly as to why. But just don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. That's all that matters here. But yeah, and I thought the acting was better in this one too, just to continue as to things I found better here. From everyone pretty much. And it's like, yeah, you have Octavia Spencer, who's amazing in everything. You have Anne Hathaway, who's fantastic. And oh my god, she ate up this role. Like, Anne Hathaway was having a blast with this. Like, you could just tell how much fun this role had to be to film for her. But even the kids, it's just, I think, just did better jobs, honestly. I liked Stanley Tucci more than Rowan Atkinson in that role. And I love Rowan Atkinson. I really do. I just think everyone was better. It's really that simple. But I will be fair here. One thing I will say that the original definitely did better is the meeting with the witch at the beginning. When our kid first meets with the witch, before they go to the hotel and everything. In the original, the witch kind of like meets him. I think he's out at a treehouse or something. The witch comes out, she meets him, and she talks sweetly to him. She tries to, manipulate him and everything. She's tricky. She's cunning. She's smart. The witch in here that he meets in the hardware store, it's just like, she's just hissing and rasping at him, and it's like, lady, chill. I understand, again, that they were making, like, the witches seem more threatening and creepy and, evil. And for the most part in the movie, that works. But this is one scene I think it actually is hindered by. I think actually having the witch be cunning and smart and manipulative makes her more threatening. Also, I believe it was the Grand High Witch who was trying to manipulate him in the original. And in here, it's just a random other witch. We see her again, but she's not important. She doesn't have an actual role to play or anything. So, that's a little bit different. But the Grand High Witch is shown before the hotel stuff because of the flashback with the grandmother. So, we still get to see her beforehand and see her kind of like, I guess you could say, out in the wild. But yeah, this movie definitely messed up on that part. I'll give it that. I will be completely fair here. But I'm just saying, from an overall enjoyment perspective and from the case of most things in this movie, I think it was better than the original. At least for me personally. Like I said, I would sooner rewatch this one than I would the original. I think I've seen the original like 2 times after I originally watched it back in December. I think I saw it 2 more times. This one, I'm probably going to see a lot more than that. I'm probably going to rewatch a lot more. But yeah, either way, thank you so much for tuning in. And tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this movie? Well, what did you think of it compared to the original version as well? And again, if you disagree with me, that's fine. It's your opinion. It's my opinion. We're entitled to having different opinions. Just be, nice about it. Let me know your thoughts down below. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.